Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nitzy coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today. I'm really excited to bring y'all one right here that I got right here, a banger. I had a lot of fun making this one right here. This is going to be the real, the young OG vocal tutorial. So if you guys do have any more different ideas, comments, or suggestions down below for different artists y'all want to see, go ahead and drop it down below. You know, we more than happy to get to it. You know, I'm going to break down everything, go into a little bit of depth about how you can get that type of, you know, scammer type of Detroit sound. A lot of people in South Florida actually like to do this sound too. There's a lot of like rappers in like North Miami and stuff like that I'm familiar with, you know, where it's like they like to use this same type of style of rapping too, you know. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's not waste no time. Let's get to listening to that music. Let's go.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no dirty clip in here, this is 6 hours. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it for 100,000 in the car. I'm in this not a Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit a sprinter, bet it won't start.
All right, so that's the kind of sound that we got going here today. And very first thing, I just want to look at it like, let's just pay attention to how, you know, when I was rapping it, I was trying to catch Rio's tone. So you got to always understand that, like, with making music, there's always a character to a vocal, you know. That's the amazing thing about life. It's like a story, but everybody got like their own character, not only with their voice, but just literally their personality. So you always got to try to like bring that out into the music. And with Rio, you know, it was a situation where he has like a snickering, 2 weeks, I got been around. Like, his voice is really smooth. I love it. His voice is not too deep. It's kind of like low midi range, like low mid range type of, kind of a very smooth top end. And I just like the way that he be rapping with his little accent. He kind of sound like he's snickering. So I was trying to bring that snicker in here, and let's kind of listen to how I was like going up against his actual vocal. It feel, you know, hopefully YouTube don't block it.
So many hundreds stacked up, could do a flip off from Paramount cups from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in 10 for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6 hours. 9,000 for this whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought I was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in an Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the whole click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car.
So yeah, essentially that's what I wanted to show you guys too, is that sometimes this is this word that I've kind of like thought of. It's called ear imagination, where you need to imagine sometimes with your ear. Like, if you hear an artist that has the voice kind of like that, where you need to imagine what type of processing that you're going to do with your ears before you even try to do anything to figure out where you're going to take it. You know, every time you hop on a mix, it's kind of like when you go into your car and you start that build with the key, you feel me? You got to kind of already got an idea of like, okay, I'm gonna go down the street, or no, I'm gonna go up the turnpike, I'm gonna go up the highway, because that's just gonna keep you focused while you mixing, you feel me? You gotta have like a clear direction and idea in your mind. So let's listen to it, what it sound like with and without, and we're gonna go over this real vocal triangle. Let's go.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6 hours. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it for 100,000 in the car. I'm in this not a Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big.
So yeah, that's what we kind of have, like a little home recording that's really boomy with not a lot of character. And every time you record a vocal, I kind of see it like a ball of clay. Like, that vocal literally sounds like a big lump of clay, where it's like you gotta mold that lump of clay to become like that piece of art that you wanted to be. Like, that's what you are as an engineer. You heard how that vocal was just like a big blop. It's like a big little fat ball of clay, you know, a little Play-Doh. But then at the processing that we slowly doing, we slowly shaping everything, we starting to carve out a statue, which is the vocal So first thing that we use to do that is with the EQ. So I had a little you know, EQ over here where I didn't try to roll off too much of the low end with his vocal, especially because with Rio's voice, it's like his voice is not really deep, but I still do want it to be powerful. A lot of his voice is in the low mid. So, you know, I used a kind of like a combination of a bell and a shelf as well, just to kind of tonally smooth out his vocal. So sometimes you got to be very delicate with these things, kind of like with a lump of clay, you know, you just can't just grab that bit and expect it to turn into a vase. You got to slowly shape it. So that's what I want to get y'all to understand, you know, the slight sort of moves. And of course he has the snicker. So I use something like a shelf right here to boost that up a little bit. And also, you know, this filter right here was important, you know, like the slope of the filter. You know, sometimes you can make something really sound abrupt if you do something like this. You know, it kind of sound like, you know, it will kind of like affect the flow of the rapper. You might not necessarily hear it, but you will feel it. Let's listen to, you know, how it sounded like with and without. But with my slope, I had it on the smoothest one because I wanted to make the snickering sound smooth. You feel me? So let go.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it for 100,000 in the car. I'm in this mountain Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308.
So I love that first type of EQ, and just pay attention. That's kind of like the language of EQ, what I always try to talk about. You heard how like when the slope was like really just like a brick wall. You heard how it kind of like made his voice sound a little bit more like he was talking a little bit more direct a little bit. I know you kind of heard it, you know, go back and replay it, but it's like when you know, the shape of the EQ and the slope of the EQ will affect like the flow of the rapper, the language of the rapper, how they talking and everything like that. So sometimes when you use how can I say, a little bit more gentle, slow, it will just help to it will make things sound a little bit smoother. But it's not just about like cutting out background noise or nothing like that. It's like the tonality, like the language, the way he's talking about, you know, his life and his music. And you as an engineer too, you're kind of like a interpreter, you know, you're kind of like somebody who's taking what you hear in the studio of the artist and trying to translate that into the music so that as soon as you press play back on the speakers, it's still the same vibe and everything like that. And, you know, in true scammer fashion, you know, I had to rip this beat as well. So this is not the original instrumental. This instrumental actually has a little bit of crackling and noise in it, just so y'all can know. The template is pretty clean. When I do use noise in my templates, I always tell y'all, but this beat, I scammed it, you know, I sweated it for that beat, you know, just like any Detroit or North Miami nigga. I had to rip him for that beat. I had to finesse him for that beat, and I ripped it off YouTube. So you'll hear a little bit of crackling in the beat. Yeah, so that's not coming from the template, but even then, in some situations, you might have a 2-track beat that literally does have actual vinyl noise in it. And in a situation like that, you have to always account for that when you mix it too. Like you can't be doing, you know, you should just be watching if the analog plugins are adding noise, because if you already have a 2-track beat that is like a throwback beat with a sample, right? But you keep using these analog plugins that are adding noise and you ain't even paying attention. Now your whole track just gonna sound like a little bit too overwhelming. It's gonna sound too noisy. It's gonna sound like a smoking barbecue or something like that, like a barbecue grill with the lid popped off. And then the next day after that, we have the RVOCs, and very simple with the RVOCs, you know, we have the compressor section right here. This is the limiter section right here. And I love the RVOCs because it really just tightens up a vocal. So, you know, this gain right here is actually kind of like a limiter as well. And I'm not necessarily sure if this is how much limiting is happening, but this number right here is definitely different. So let's look at it real quick.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP.
Yeah, so I really just like the way that you know, the Arvox is working on the mid range of his vocal, and I did want his vocal to be a little bit up front, just due to the fact that he didn't, in his actual song, he did not give us no ad libs and nothing like that. That's one thing I paid attention to with a lot of those type of like Detroit type of songs where they don't really have no ad libs or no background vocals. So usually, if there isn't any ad libs, you know, just to make sure it doesn't feel like it's empty, I like to put a little bit more water in the cup for the vocal and push it up front, you know. So like I don't want people or the listener to feel like the song is an empty glass. So, you know, if I only got half a glass, I pour more water into it, and I try to, you know, I put more into the vocals, what I'm trying to say, to make it up front, to fill up the space of the beat, you know. But I also did some ad libs as well, which is kind of different. And yeah, you know, this is like a compressor, this is a limiter, and I just like the way it really squeezes and tightens up the vocal. It really did something to the mid-range, and the mid-range is kind of like the distance, you know. Once you hear more mid-range information, it will make the vocal sound closer. So that's something that you always got to pay attention to. Next thing, that after that, I had a de-esser. A de-esser was doing about 1 to 3, nothing crazy. We're not really gonna go over that too much, but let's look at the multi-band for somebody like Rio. It was somebody like Rio, it was just really trying to smooth out like the snickering his voice. You know, like you got to always pay attention to, because a multi-band could potentially ruin not only the flow, but also like the traits of the rapper's you know, vocals. So let's listen to it with and without, because I feel like the multi-band was pretty important to just really helping his vocal just sit inside of the beat and really just also move musically. And that's always coming down to like the release times of the compression. So that's something that you got to kind of play around with. I usually like to start on the default preset, but let's listen to what it sound like with and without.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add your script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it far. 100,000 in the car, I'm in this not a Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308.
Now, when I bypassed it, obviously the vocal was a little bit louder, but even though it was louder, it did not sound better. So usually in a situation like that, you know, sometimes I like to make you know, the processing, like the before version a little bit louder, just to make sure I'm not tricking myself with the level. Like for example, like I'll do a compressor, but I'll put the output of the compressor lower. So like I'm like, damn, even though this compressed part sounds lower, does it still sound better than the original one? Because just the nature of compression, just squeezing something, you obviously gonna get exposed to more of it, you know. So even though the vocal was louder, it did not sound better to me, in my opinion. It kind of sounds sloppy and all over the place. The snicker thing, like it was just kind of getting annoying. So sometimes if you do have like a high voice, you might want to use something like a multi-band to really just smooth it out and just keep everything in check tonally, because of course, you know, everybody's vocal has like different frequencies. Some people have like a more of like for example, like if we look at an EQ, somebody might have more of bass in their vocal right here, so the whole curve of their frequency of their vocal is not the same as everybody. So sometimes I feel like with Rio, with all that snickering, it's a lot of like high mid kind of stuff going on, really. So that's why you know, I dialed in with something like the C4, and I used kind of like a fast attack, a fast release, and it really was just primarily working on the snickering. Like out of all of these bands, I feel like this one is the most active one.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add your script, going.
All right, cool. So that's what we have with the C4. Next thing, the CLA 76. This is just to give a little bit of that grittiness. Sometimes you got to think about where the hell did the person come from. So I damn well know Detroit is a rough place, you know, like based on the people I have recorded. I recorded a couple people from Detroit. That's the thing about Detroit. Like I love them because they be coming down to Miami. They be tapping in over here. No cap. That's why I was trying to say some. I'm located in Pompano Beach, Florida. That's where I'm from. But you know, I work in a studio in Miami. And a lot of the times, you know, them people from Detroit, they come down here, you know, because they vacation in this Miami. It's cold where they come from. So they got to come over here to, you know, vibe, you feel me? So, you know, they be coming over here and like, you know, they just cool people, bro. Like all of them cool, but they already telling me like, you know, it's not sweet over there now. Detroit not sweet like that, you feel me? So we use a CLA 76 with that in my mind. I'm already knowing I got to dirty it up so it sounds like the trenches. So, you know, as soon as that type of vocal that scamming that dark life come through where they talking about their life, I gotta make the music match with it. You feel me? I gotta, you know, pretty much custom tailor like the haircut to the vocalist pretty much.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is...
So like you said, like you see it right here, pretty much this is gonna be the 0 dB type of compression preset, so 0 to 1. I guess you could do 1 if you do want to. And of course, with the situation like this, we just using it for the tone of the components of the effect components. It helps add a little bit of that aggression. Even though he's snickering and he's sounding swag, I still wanted to have a little bite, so it still feel hard, you know, because the beat hitting pretty hard too. Sometimes you got to think about the tone of the 808. You don't want the 808 to overpower the listener, because sometimes the 808 will do that because it's boom, 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 boom. You feel me? That beat hitting really hard. So the vocal, even though he's still gonna have his little swag as the engineer, sometimes you got to add in a little bit of that bite for the artist. That's a part of your job too. Then we use something like the Shep 73, and pretty much I went with a preset, I think it was vocal 1. And when it comes to presets, you know, sometimes I do like to, you know, use presets as a starting position, because it might put the knob somewhere I might never put it. But for the most part, I usually do my processing from scratch. I mean, if you learn in the beginning, maybe you might want to try just to work off of some presets. You know, you pull it out and you're like, all right, let me keep dialing it in. You know, whenever you always making music, you always got to be going for the sound in your head. You have to use your ear imagination. You feel me? That's the word that I call it. I looked that word up and it looks like nobody ever invented it. So I guess I'm gonna just coin it. So yeah, your ear imagination is pretty important, because as soon as I was hearing this bit, I'm like, damn, what EQ I'm gonna put on it? I was like, okay, I already know Neve's 1073. You feel me? It's gonna be smooth, it's gonna be creamy, it's gonna help the little snickering, and let's keep listening to, you know, how that bit was able to, you know, really just help the vocal just come to life. That's what the Neve does. It has a transformer, it gives us the weight. It has a transistor, which gives us the buzz on the top. You can even overdrive it. We're gonna look at that too, but let's listen to how, you know, sometimes the tonality of the EQ is all about the language. How is the rapper speaking? You got to use everything that you can to enhance it. You feel me? The soup might taste good right now, but let me throw a little dash of salt. Let me throw a little lemon pepper in that bit and see how I can make it better without overdoing it.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add your script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it for 100,000 in the car. I'm in this Mount Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit his fender, bet it won't start.
So that's what I'm trying to show y'all too. You know, people love the level match, but I'm trying to show y'all like a little bit of a different technique where, shoot, you might as well just make the process one sound a little bit lower, because even though the when I bypassed it, it was a little bit louder, it did not sound better, bruh. It sounded like it had more muck, more gunk, more all of that nasty stuff. But when I brought the bypass out of it, you know, even though the volume was lower, it sounded better. So that's something that you guys got to figure out how to do. That's something that's gonna come with you making music over time. Is like, you can hear that even though something is louder, it doesn't sound necessarily better. You know, there's a difference between colored gain and just regular gain. Like, for example, you see this fader right here. If I push this fader right here, it's just gonna give me clean gain. Like, it's not going to add any more salt, lemon pepper, or any cayenne Cajun seasoning. It's not going to add any more flavor. But if you were to push like one of these faders over here, it would add a little bit more color. So, you know, I did play around with the faders right here. I think I just brought it down by like a 0.7 or something like that. But sometimes that's what I'll do. Sometimes I'll pull this clean fader and push one of these dirty faders to get more color, more of that life inside of the music. So that's very important to do. So I'm also showing y'all that technique today of, you know, sometimes, you know, let the original one be louder. You know, try to have something in a situation where you do the processing and it's a little bit more quiet, but you're not fooling yourself with the level, not necessarily level matching, because even with compression, you could level match it, but just the way compression has like a perceived loudness type of thing, where if you compact that bit, of course, you're going to be able to hear more of what's evident. You know, of course, if you have a scab that might be small, but you start picking on it, of course, it's going to get swollen, even though it might be the same size, just because you were squeezing on it. Now there's more of it. So, you know, it's something like that too. And then after that, you know, we had J37 tape, nothing crazy, just giving us a little bit of that smoothing, you know, that snickering. You know, I'm using the tape kind of as a way as to smooth his vocal out. I'm shaping the tonality as well with the tape pretty much. So let's keep going.
Do a whole EP tonight and show break tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1100 miles on the scat, I could get it far. 100,000 in the car, I'm in this not a Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit a sprinter, bet it won't start.
Yeah, so, you know, with the tape pretty much 15 IPS speed, you know, that's very neutral. I use this tape and then I push the saturation a little bit because I just wanted to help his voice get a little bit of that, you feel me, that little human element. That's what saturation does. It's kind of like non-linearities. That's what we are as people. So after that, you know, we got the Fresh Air. I love Fresh Air, bro. You know, I don't like Slate. I don't like any Slate plugins, but this is the only Slate plugin I ever liked and it's free. So, you know, that pretty much just solidified to me how I felt about Slate plugins, you know. And the next day after that is I have the H delay right here, and this is a ping pong slap, and you could barely hear it, but this is more just like for the feeling, because we do have like a you know, a vocal, you know, not much background vocal, so I wanted to help give the vocal a little bit of wobbliness.
Do a whole EP tonight and show break tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1100 miles on the scat, I could get it far. 100,000 in the car, I'm in this not a Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit a sprinter, bet it won't start.
So yeah, you can barely hear it, especially towards the end of the line. You were able to hear that it's definitely there, but it's more like a feeling thing.
If 308 hit a sprinter, bet it won't start.
See, sometimes mixing is all about the subtle things, the 1%. Of course, in the beginning, you want to focus on like the broader picture. You know, it's kind of like any other artist. In the beginning, they you know, they put the frame up, and, you know, they do like the first big strokes, the first big lines, and then they look at that bit, and then they start dialing in a little bit. That's what you have to do with engineering as well. And then, you know, we pushed it out, and I kind of like tilted it and made it a little bit crooked, kind of, you know, just to help it, you know, get its own type of dimension. You know, I kind of leaned it over a little bit, just so it wouldn't, you know, be too clustered inside the middle, you know, especially with hip hop music. You got a hard hitting 808 down the middle, you got a hard hitting kick down the middle, you got a hard hitting snare. Sometimes it's like 3 people trying to all fit into like a 2-door coupe. It's like 5 people trying to fit into a 2-door coupe. Bit is only 2 seats. How we finna get all in there? So every song has a limited amount of space. Yeah. It has a limited amount of space, and you need to figure out how to get in where to fit in. So, you know, sometimes we got to push things to the side and everything. And after that, you know, we have the H verb. I really like the H verb a lot. You know, it's actually different from like a regular reverb. I'm finding myself a lot of the times using these impulse response reverbs. And with these actually model like the sound of a real room. So I don't know, it just makes it sound a little bit more real with the vocal, especially with the lead vocal. I like using this type of reverb a lot. And this reverb is pretty crazy because you get like to really dial in with the EQ, kind of get like a 4-band EQ, where a lot of EQs only give you like high and low cut, but you can really go in the mid range and like push the part right here. So I pushed the presence. I want the EQ to work a lot more on like that mid range snickering of his vocal. Pay attention, you know, how I'm building everything around the strengths of his vocal. And then after that, you know, it also gives you the option to have like dynamics, and I put a de-esser in that bit just so it wouldn't hit a little bit too hard, because sometimes the S's, they can really go inside of that reverb and really just start, you can hear the scratchiness. And after that, we had a sidechain compressor, and then after that we had a futz box tape distortion type of thing, making the reverb kind of sound a little bit gritty. So let's listen to it.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60.
Yeah, so pretty much that type of reverb chain right there was more like you know, it was more like a low ambience is what I want to call it, like a gritty ambience. You know, it kind of feels like a helicopter or a jet flying real low. You know, it really just helps to reverberate some of like the good traits. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like just letting the putting the vocal on some steroids or something like that, just juicing it up a little bit so it could get just a little bit stronger, but in a very subtle way, you know. And after that, we had the doubler. The doubler was just helping give a little bit more dimension to the vocal. And then, you know, with the doubler, I also let a lot of his vocal get doubled just because, you know, it gave a lot more of a warming characteristic to his vocal. So that's what doubling does. It kind of does like pitch delay type of shifting situation. I like to also use the Sound Toys little micro shift as well. But the doubler is pretty good with the Waves one. It has a different type of sound to it than the Sound Toys version. So let's listen.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands I'm in.
Yep, so pretty much that's what we had with the doubler. And you know how I EQ'd the doubler is because I didn't want too much of that nastiness that I'm already getting from his voice. So it's kind of like I don't want to double up on what is already good. You know, I already got what's good. Okay, cool. Now let's try to improve this. And that's kind of why I rolled off a little bit of the top coming into the doubler, just so I don't get all of that high end starting to double up. But mostly it was kind of like a wide mid-range warmth type of situation. And after that, you know, to get some of my brightness, because this whole time I was just focused on shaping the high end of his voice just so it wasn't annoying. To get back a little bit of my brightness, I used the Aphex Vintage Oral Exciter, which is kind of like a quote-unquote noise reduction system. For back in the days, there was like Dolby, there was the Aphex, there was the DBX 180 as well. And with this one right here, it's tube. So you know, tubes in general do have a very interesting way of brightening up vocal. And you know, we use something like a tube exciter here to get some of that brightness, and it was bright but not harsh. And that's what I'm always trying to go for with my songs, you know, replay value. That's a part of the ear imagination, because sometimes you got to listen to a song, but you got to listen to it like it is your first time listening to it, like listening to it with a fresh perspective. Sometimes you got to have to take a break from the music, not to take too long on it, because you might lose perspective. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes when you're making your own music, it's kind of like if you got a pimple on your face, you feel me? You might wake up in the morning and be like, damn, I look so good in that mirror. Oh my God, look at me. But you know, but you might not even realize that you have a huge pimple on your face because you quote unquote out of perspective. So that's the most important thing about making music. It's not just about having perspective on the mix, but just in general, like life perspective, you feel me? Knowing where the rapper come from and all that stuff. So I ain't want to make it too clean and squeaky and glossy. So all I did was just use a Aphex Vintage Oral Exciter, which will give me brightness, but a certain type of brightness that, you know, I kind of like it a lot.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about prepaid, the old click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it far. 100,000 in the car, I'm in, this not a Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit his fender.
I really like it, especially when I use something like this subtly. It kind of gives more of the vocal a quote-unquote fuzz. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a fuzz, kind of like something like a fuzz from a peach. You know how like if you look at a peach, it kind of has like them little tiny invisible hairs. That's kind of what this is doing for me. All right, so next thing after that, we have a CLA 76 on Bluey, kind of adding in some of that brightness back in, but using parallel compression. So there's a lot of ways to make the vocal sound bright, of course. And of course, I wanted to do it very subtly. You can use boosting EQ, but I never recommend boosting EQ just because you will be effectively kind of like, you know, boosting all of the other frequencies within that same ballpark. You know what I mean? You can't have a basketball team without a coach. Pretty much, you know, it goes hand in hand. You know what I mean? And that's why I like to use something like the 1176, because I get to go in between. You know, we get to start playing like 2-on-2, you know, like the game within the game. And the 76 makes it brighter without giving me any of the you know, negatives of using boosting EQ, bitch. So you know, after that I use something like a limiter, and I just like how this limiter sounds because it has like a distortion type of quality to it. And this is like a L1. I think this one comes with the basic Waves Gold bundle, but you know, sometimes when you put an 1176 on all buttons in mode, it will start to pump, and the needle will start to be like kind of like a fan, you know, like a ceiling fan will whoo, 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 whoo. Like it will go a little bit too fast and go a little bit off grid a little bit sometimes, you know, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted a very smooth vocal. Sometimes when somebody's rapping like that, I might use the 1176 no limiter on it to really have everything like really start punching, you know. And you know, let's just look at how this limiter is working with that 1176 together.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about potato, click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car.
All right, so that's pretty much the main thing with the lead vocal. And I would be, very not good if I didn't talk about this right now. But you know how when you listen to these Detroit type of scammer rappers, it kind of always sounds abrupt with the punch of, like it sounds like they like jump into the beat so perfectly. So I mean, a way you could do that if you wanted to on this song, really what I was trying to do is I was just trying to make sure I could get the best take, because it's like when I'm doing people's vocal, sometimes I gotta hold that bit, you feel me? So that's why I can't always keep punching in. But if you was trying to make like one of those scamming type of beats, sometimes what you gotta do is you gotta zoom in a little bit and you gotta like cut the vocal a little bit too much, and it's just a situation where it makes it sound more abrupt. Let me see. Sometimes the rapper will be capable of doing that, but they'll have to be like very good to time that bit perfectly to cut it up a little bit. But just listen really quickly. I'm gonna try to show y'all.
I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here. This is 6R. 9,000 for the whip. This a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script. Go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick. I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes what you got to do if you have people who are trying to do that scamming music, like sometimes you got to go in there and just like cut the kind of like the initial transient of the vocal like just a little bit too far. And I don't know if you would do something like a fade, how they would do it, but that's a very important part of their music, which is kind of like really raw, that they do that. Hey donkey, like they come in like on that downbeat like every time, and it's like it's pretty raw how they do it. But if I was an engineer trying to do that, that's kind of what I would do. I would go in there and I would just cut like the transient of that like vocal a little bit too much. But let me see how it sounds right now.
Clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick.
Yeah, so that's kind of like how I would do it. I would probably keep cutting it. Let me see if we could do it right here too.
Why you talking about potato, click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I did right here. Like, look at this part right here where there's more tail to this, but what I did is I actually cut it off because I wanted to make it sound really abrupt. And that's what Detroit rappers be doing, man.
I got a click robber. Why you talking about potato, click star? I can do a whole EP tonight.
It just sounds really like I'm interrupting myself in a conversation. That's what people always say. All right, last thing, let's look at the mix bus chain real quick. Actually, so I did actually use just a little bit of mix bus compression. All of my vocal templates moving forward, all of the versions moving forward will come with this little basic mix bus chain, and it's just pretty much the run through. And with the something like the Fairchild, it helps every single like beat. I'm not gonna lie, just because it gives the sound of the tubes, the transformers, it gives the weight. Sometimes when you download it, convert a beat from YouTube, you can lose a little bit of life. And then after that, we have something like the EQP1A just running through. So this is the pretty much basic mastering chain, but it always works very well. And sometimes I would always tell y'all to try to do a little bit, just pull up this threshold real quick, just do like 1 dB, because sometimes when you do compression and it works, it will tighten up the 808 a little bit. So you don't want no like loose booty ass 808. So let's listen.
I got a click robber. Why you talking about potato, click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1,100 miles on the scat, I could get it for 100,000 in the car. I'm in this amount of Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with some big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit his.
Yeah, so there you go right there. That's the exact term. You don't want no loose booty at 808. So sometimes try to use like a little bit of mixed bus compression, maybe something like the Fairchild, the one that I have right there. But usually if you want to do mixed bus compression on rap music, like you got to pay attention to the 808, because the 808 is usually going to be the one that triggers the compression, unless you're doing like a side chain. But usually, like if the compression don't sound good with the 808, just listen to the 808. If it sounds like because some 2-bus compressors, like their input and output will add like saturation that will literally change the 808, and if it don't sound good, don't do it. I'm telling you, you know what I mean. And then after that, let's look at the ad-libs real quick, before and after.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee.
Sip.
Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6R. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Come on, bitch Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking about potato, click star? I can do a whole EP tonight and celebrate tomorrow. Rolls truck 250, this a big car. 1100 miles on the scat, I could get it for 100,000 in the car. I'm in this Mount Mopar. Hit this Hellcat with something big, now it's a go-kart. If 308 hit his sprinter.
All right, cool. So that's what we had before and after. Then we had like a J37 tape just coming in there with the 7.5 IPS speed, which has a poorer high-end response, which is just pretty much is just gonna make it sound a little bit more grainy, a little bit more gritty. It's like, so our lead vocal was pretty clean, very clean compared to what we had in the original. And then, you know, now with my ad-libs, I'm setting the sound stage, I'm doing my little contrast with it and everything like that. And I just want the ad-libs to be a little bit more grainy. So it's like, I done put a clean mop in front of you and I done put a dirty mop in front of you. So now that we, you know, we making the floor of the music, we setting the whole house up of the music. Now you know, like, okay, that's what that is and that's what it is, because you have a point of reference. So the next thing after that is you know, the EQ, and that, as well as with the EQ coming back to the point of reference. If I can tell you what the backyard is, you gonna know what the front door is. You feel me? Like sometimes when you telling people, oh well, you got to go up the turnpike and you got to turn left, well, if they don't have no way to localize where, like, you know, the point of reference is at, then they're gonna be completely lost. So I like using ad-libs too. The ad-libs kind of help the vocal sound like it's even more forward, because now you really understand what forward is, because now I done put something in the backyard. Now you really understand what the front door is. So after that, you know, we have something like the RVOCs and everything, just helping the ad-libs shoot through the gate so that it can sound a little bit more abrupt.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no dirty clip in here, this is 6 R's. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala. Beat her down for an hour, got a click robber. Why you talking?
All right, yeah, so the main thing with the gate too is I see the gate kind of like the language of making music too, you know, where with the gate, it's kind of like, you know, somebody's talking, right, but then you put your hands on their neck and you start squeezing them, right, which is what a gate is doing, is squeezing the signal pretty much, right? They're gonna talk different. They're gonna be talking a little bit more like that. So I kind of see a gate literally exactly like that. That's literally what a gate is, you know. It's like choking the type of ad-lib vocals, and it just helps add a little tighter type of, you know, popping out the door, popping into the world type of vibe. Then we have the Shep 73, you know, just doing a little bit of EQ. I just use this low shuff right here to make it sound a little bit warmer, and then after that it was just really running through it mostly just to get the sound of that Neve type of vibe. And the next thing that we had is the L1 limiter. The L1 limiter is pretty important for these ad-libs right here, because I'm trying to squeeze the mid-range. I'm using the limiter as an effect, not to tame no peaks or whatever people be saying. I'm using it as an effect to squeeze the mid-range. It's kind of like if you was sitting in the car and there was like, you was in the middle of the car, right, and then there was two people on both of the sides and you sitting in the passenger seat, like you gonna feel like you cramped in the middle just because both sides is really coming in on you. You feel me? So that's kind of how I see a limiter as well, you know. It's pretty much just squeezing the mid-range.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no dirty clip in here, this is 6 R's. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add a script, go and get water. Bitch thought it was a trick, I gave her $60. Plus she ain't get to see the bands, I'm in a new Impala.
So it's just it's really the combination of the gate and the L1 that's making the vocals like you feel me, do something like that, like, you feel me? So it's kind of like I'm creating my own type of movement, and that's what compression is really about to me, you know. Movement, the language of music, tonality, all of that stuff like that. Then we had like a full range delay, so, you know, no filters or nothing like that, and that's kind of really what I had with my delay sound here. After that, you know, I had the H verb again. I love the H verb because it's modeling like the sound of an actual space, and the reverb sounds a little bit more real. Usually I might use something like Valhalla if I want to get an exaggerated reverb sound, but a situation like this, I wanted to really just sound like it's real, like he really in Detroit, he really talking about his life. So that's why I use some real reverbs that are modeling impulse responses. Well, of course, the, you know, de-esser again, and I use Greg Wells Vocal Church, and I like this reverb a lot just because it just has a certain way that, you know, it breaks up. That's the difference between like a Valhalla or a reverb like this, which is a quote unquote IR reverb, convolution reverb or whatever, where like the Valhalla, you know, it's a reverb, but this one is like a real actual like real space. So it, you know, as soon as you press space bar, you're going to hear the way it decays. It sounds completely different, I ain't gonna lie. And then after that we had the Shep 73 and I put it in drive mode. I'm just getting some of that good old distortion.
Paramount cup from Starbucks, I don't sip coffee. Sat in tent for 2 weeks and got a brick off me. Bitch, I'm a big baller. Ain't no 30 clip in here, this is 6 hours. 9,000 for the whip, this a big quarter. Hey junkie, I gotta add the script, go and get water. Bitch thought I was a...
Yep, so you know, I use some of that harshness, which is always, I try to tell you, harshness is a tool, you know, life is harsh. You know, sometimes these people that be rapping about what they went through, they talking about a harsh reality. So guess what? Common sense, make the music a little bit harsh, but you got to control yourself and blend that bit in. So that's what I did. I made it a little bit harsh by using the drive or the Neve, and it just sounds so musical, and I blended it in, and you heard, you know, how it gave a little bit more texture. It makes it a little bit more tangible. Bitch, hey, bitch. So I'm doing all these things to make my ad libs come to life. I don't want them to sound like, oh, they're boring and they don't have no life and nobody cares about them. I want my ad libs to stand on their own 2 feet so they could be in the mix and people be like, damn, I like them ad libs too. I like the lead vocal, but the ad libs is giving me something different. Damn, I like this burger, but shoot, these fries busting down right now. It's always a situation like that where it's complementary parts, you know, complementary parts. And then after that, CLA 76 with no limiter on it, just because I'm using the CLA 76 because I want to really make the ad libs like flam a lot. So that's pretty much the end of my video today. If you guys do want to get this template, you'll be able to get it down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Any more different artists y'all want to see, drop it. Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Peace.